9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello and welcome to our PROSTEP Tech Day, the meeting of the PROSTEP community. I'm so pleased that so many of you have managed to make it today. This is the first time that we're holding this event online live. I can promise you it's worth taking part. It's very interactive, very interesting, and we have a great deal prepared for you. I'd like to start by introducing myself. I'm Julia Bauer, the TV host and event host, and I'll be guiding you through the program today. This is our last session of the day. It will continue until 3:30 p.m. and we'll be dealing with Product Suite OpenPDM. We have speakers from PROSTEP, we have a customer presentation, and we also have a completely new product that we'll be presenting to you today, OpenCLM. And what's interactive about all of this? You'll be getting involved. We want you to be able to ask your questions, they'll then be answered. But we want you to be able to network as well. You can see on your screen that there's a box for you to enter your questions in. You can direct your questions at the speakers, but you can also ask questions of the customer. We'll go through these questions, I'll see them on my tablet, and then I'll put them to the experts. Please do ask your questions. And what about the networking aspect? Well, following this session, there'll be a 60-minute session in another team meeting where you can go into a little bit more depth of the issues that were raised. You might find it a shame that you've missed the first two sessions, or you might want to share these sessions with a colleague. Well, that's not a problem at all. We're recording these sessions, we're translating everything into English, and you'll be able to find them online in a few days. So this is all from me for now. Obviously the question is, what's been happening at PROSTEP recently? We would also like to look at the agenda a little bit more closely. There is someone better placed to do so than myself, someone who has been working for the company for 23 years and heads the business unit Products. Welcome, Peter Pfalzgraf.
Welcome back, and also welcome to those who were not with us this morning at our Tech Day. Mrs. Bauer has already said that we are now in our third session today, from 2 till 3:30, about our OpenSuite PDM. The Tech Day is an event at which we can provide detailed information about all of our products and want to show what has happened over the last few years. So here once again the agenda for our session this afternoon. In the following slot we're going to be talking about novelties, topics that have been integrated in the product OpenPDM, and I'm also going to address PROSTEP news in general. At about 2:25, we want to present a client presentation. That's Lockheed Martin Aeronautics of America, Clifton Davis. This is also pre-recorded, but in our Q&A session later on you will have the possibility to have a live discussion with Clifton. He's on the west coast of America, so you can work out for yourself what time that would be. 5:30 in the morning, I presume, but he did promise to be with us. Then the highlights from the PROSTEP lab. It's about presenting topics that we're working on at the moment that will, of course, become highly important in future. And in this context, we'll have a preview on our new product, OpenCLM. That's the first time that we'll be talking about it. It's very important for us next year, 2021, and it's important for us to give you an initial preview of this product. Last but not least, the roadmap. Again, it's about showing you what specifically we have in planning, in new versions, new issues for 2021, and also address topics that are relevant for OpenPDM in future. And then a Q&A session. I said at the beginning we'll have two of them, one directly after the client presentation. That's Clifton Davis from Lockheed Martin. And then at the end, a 10-minute session. Again, that worked very well this morning for product managers and everybody else who want to ask, of course. Nevertheless, we'll have a separate Teams session, which gives you the possibility to discuss things in a smaller group with our product manager. We got the feedback this morning, but that worked very well. It was a smaller group, but you can discuss with our two product managers, Daniel Wiegand and Timo Trautmann. Now, just a few words about PROSTEP. These two pictures are to illustrate our past a little bit. That was our last Tech Day, the end of 2018, so pretty much exactly 2 years ago here in our neighborhood, from where we are today, in Darts, the Darmstadt Computing Center. We were able to communicate in person with you there, today only online, but as we've seen so far today, it seems to be working very well. This is a picture of our 25th year anniversary. That was at the beginning of 2019, more than a year ago now, of course, but it was a very nice get-together with 300 people, and we were able to have a look back at the past. Last year, again, there were a few novelties I would like to point out to you. PROSTEP, besides the products, with its portfolio starting with PLM management and consulting, and continues with our solution components, implementation of projects, but then of course also in the context of our projects or specific customer projects. And quite a lot has happened in this area as well too. In 2019, PROSTEP became a majority stakeholder of VHC GmbH. That's a consulting company which is positioned in PLM for EE, as it is called. It's about application lifecycle management, the whole thing in context with PLM systems engineering, software development, very much focused on consulting. Philipp Hasenegger, as the business manager, has a team of about 35 people who can significantly extend our competence in consulting. So we see ourselves as a partner for digital transformation in your company, which is also expressed in the bottom part of this slide. We have white papers for things like, for instance, Industry 4.0 in the context of PDM or PLM, or also Digital Twin. So if you're interested, you can download these white papers directly from our website. Then, our solutions and implementation, again an important step in 2019 in Poland. We started a new software development center. So PROSTEP Poland Wrocław, we have a new team there of software developers who help us in customers' software projects, particularly with our main clients, but also in product development. And that's a nice connection to the products that we are talking about today, because that team is involved as well, particularly thinking of our new product solution, OpenCLM, but also in the context of OpenPDM. Today it's about the products in total, and now, as already said, particularly about OpenPDM. Here you can see our trends in the market. OpenPDM, under the main key integration, OpenCLM on the right as a preview listed as well on this slide, and in the following session, as already announced, it's going to be about OpenPDM. Mrs. Bauer.
Thank you. I think we should now talk a little bit about OpenPDM, not just with Mr. Pfalzgraf, but also with another colleague who has been at the company since 1996. He heads product management. Udo Herring, welcome. I have a question for you. I would like to know about the market trends around this issue.
Oh, well, I'm glad to answer that, of course. When we talk about OpenDXM Global X, we saw the same slide. Here we can see all the known vendors and suppliers of our PLM systems, and the trend is absolutely clear. They're all heading towards cloud at the moment. That means all these large vendors have cloud solutions to offer. And cloud first, amongst other things, means that this cloud vendors want to provide a cloud or develop for a cloud and then on demand offer an on-premise solution. So there's a very clear trend visible there, which we have to confront, and we have done so about, well, looking to product manager Mirko, about 2.5 years ago, we decided to introduce a completely new technology in OpenPDM so that for these cloud scenarios, which are meant to be used by you, the vendors, it could be supported the best way possible. That means in OpenPDM we have a completely new approach in technology, but of course our expertise or the available know-how in various connectors is continued to be used. We've continued that in microservices, for instance. We have a completely new browser engine. We have standardized REST interfaces, which of course for the integration in such cloud environments will make things much easier in future. And right now we're analyzing cloud environment to see what that means for us in the context of deployment, Kubernetes, OpenShift and Docker. That's going to be something that's going to be with us the next 1 or 2 years. Then, of course, there are minor issues like authorization, and also beyond that, with the new technology, it's easier for us to make these solutions available to our partners. Now, that's the technology where we are at the moment, where we're developing. But of course, functionally, we have extended our portfolio. For instance, in shipbuilding, we've been active for many years already. And actually, you have exactly the same needs as we know primarily from the automotive sector as well. We have completely different PDM landscapes, but quite specific trends. For instance, we have the big vendors, Dassault, Siemens, or whatever they may be called, but there are also systems like Aviva, Mata, Cadmatic, Nestix, etc. These are specific systems that are used in shipbuilding, which have really more to do with factory building, because the approach is completely different when you build a ship. In the morning, we got to see one that's completely different than a car, and of course you talk about different numbers as well. And you need the respective systems that can support that, and these systems do that. But these systems all have to interact with each other as well. And for us, it was an obvious choice to use the technology from OpenPDM, which is there to reflect these processes, and extend it by the respective connectors. Furthers will follow, and we have contracts with the respective partners, and my colleague Peter Pfalzgraf will talk about that as well, of course, and we're very well equipped for future digitalization in shipbuilding in order to be able to support people there as well as we can. It's already been mentioned last Tech Day. The C Center, our collaboration solution for OpenPDM, where we can offer consistent data with PDM CAD structures being made available, and in which change processes can be initiated with partners, so partners can be incorporated, but the whole thing in a totally separate environment, completely separate from the back-end system, so that there again the greatest possible IP protection is given, and you don't have to exert a huge amount of effort so that external partners and suppliers can be given access to your internal systems. Because if you've ever done that in this kind of environment, you know what kind of administrative effort that is. But beyond that, the platform offers great options, as my colleague Timo Trautmann has already demonstrated it, for visualization. because you're basically using the same technology as in the PDF generator 3D. We're certainly going to continue expanding this topic in future, and we'll talk about few details later on. And back to Mrs. Bauer.
Thank you. I think we should continue with Mr. Pfalzgraf immediately. What customers use OpenPDM and how is it used?
I have tried to reflect all of this on one slide and put together a few examples from customers. Right at the beginning, we saw this OpenPDM puzzle and the shipbuilding puzzle. The basis is always technological partnerships, which have been running for many years already. It was addressed in OpenCLM as well. Our partnerships with Siemens, Dassault, and others, Aras, etc. But also in OpenPDM Ship, Udo Hering has already mentioned this. A completely new tool set also for suppliers of Avida, Atmatic, Vesta and others. Here we have expanded our collaboration, and on this slide you can see various versions of OpenPDM, and this is how we're marketing this tool as well, these brands. You can see OpenPDM Connect and Integrate on the left-hand side. Connect really means the system, well, a link between two systems, and integrate is a more comprehensive idea, which means you can couple several systems into two customers as examples, very good examples for how that can then develop. I'll start with Connect solution because I have to collect two systems, but then I might need to incorporate further systems in my company. I put something in inverted commas, quotes below. These are reference testimonial stories, which we have published as well. You can find them in our newsletter. But just an example, in Borso we had a project which was called JT Factory. It was about providing 3D data in a coupling between Grid Experience and SAP. That's being extended, our OpenPDM solution, in PDM solution. Similar, where Basto, we had an integration of two solutions. Together with our partner ELC, they offer an SAP-based solution called RepEP, and that's been connected with 3D Experience. But here we're talking about a further extension. Requirements management system, doors, for instance, and the solution should be further expanded. The next column, a very important topic for us, is migration. We have an OpenPDM Migrate. We have projects running with Continental. It's about replacing legacy system and migration towards a wind chill-based system, which is the backrooming Conti in the automotive sector in general. Just the same with KUKA. There's a very nice name which pops up here, the data washing machine. That's what they call it internally, because they said they have a whole lot of legacy systems which have to be replaced. That's going into a new architecture, the PLM Center and HANA and ERP side. And we are migrating data, more specifically for KUKA. That's been running for 1 or 2 years now. And these are typical applications for our migration solutions. Collaborate. They're clearly working together across companies is in the foreground. Just by way of example, the company BMW. We've run several integration projects. That's called Regelversorgung with BMW. We work with other OEMs. 0.5 tier suppliers is another expression used. We're launching a new product there. We're not allowed to talk about it right now, but it's certainly a continuous issue. It's similar for Bombardier. It's about building trains, and here Bombardier is working on large train projects to build trains together. It's known from the past that with Siemens at the time, they built the ICE, and it's currently a brand new project we've started, and probably at the next Tech Day we'll be allowed to present the name and talk about the project, but at the moment not yet. last but not least, OpenPDM ship, as we've already found, that's a world of its own. And I may point this out now. If you have any questions about that later on in the Teams session, next to Mirko Theis, Matthias Rau is going to be available, who is responsible for shipbuilding in our company. So should there be any specific questions, we can also discuss that then. But here, as customer projects, we have a project with Meyer Werft. It's about integration between your 3D experience solution and a CAD-matic solution. That's a ship-specific management system. And here, Keppel Fels, a dockyard from Singapore. They integrate their design world with manufacturing world, Marina Nestix, and we've integrated that to be used to the customers. So you can see a huge bandwidth which covers our OpenPDM suite now.
These are very interesting current issues, but Mr. Herring, let's look into the future. What can we expect from OpenPDM in the future?
Before we get to talk about that, I would just like to highlight two development projects where we are involved with our PDM expertise. That is set level 4 to 5. It's about autonomous driving at this point. And set level 5 is a fully autonomous vehicle that can drive without a driver, and 4 is the precursor level. But in this set level 4 to 5 project, it's about simulated development together with testing, and these data obviously have to be provided, have to be made available for the approval of these vehicles. That means they have to be seamlessly traceable, and in this context we become active. So a traceability solution is being developed. It's called Tracy, that's the name of the project. You could argue who came first. Our product idea, as Mr. Pfalzgraf indicated before, was there first, and then the project followed. But we're very able to incorporate our knowledge at this point. The next project, also supported by BMW, smaller consortium if you compare that to the set level 4 to 5 project, the Lürsen project. It's about creating a digital twin for monitoring processes and optimizing processes between manufacturing and assembly. There's a great need for optimization here, and with our experience that we have in shipbuilding at this point, we can support people so that the respective processes can be optimized, and of course the data can be presented in a neutral data model, which can then be continued to be used in other companies and other areas. Last but not least, what else is there in OpenPDM? Mirko Theis will address that as well later on, but I've already pointed it out. The driver, cloud readiness. We will, of course, make sure that Docker environments, Kubernetes, OpenShift, this kind of technology can be supported better to be able to scale more easily. We're at it. Of course, it will take a while for things to be implemented fully, but that's going to be a major topic for the next 2 years. Last but not least, we want functional extensions as well. We need that. It's more like ALM system. For instance, integration in CodeBeamer from Inland is planned, or so-called MBOM systems like from Oracle Primavera. That was just a rough outlook, and I'd like to pass back to Mrs. Bauer.
Thank you. A rough idea of the future and first insights into OpenPDM. We already mentioned that the last Tech Day took place 2 years ago, so a great deal has changed. We want to tell you about this Who's going to do so? Well, someone who knows a lot about the subject. He has worked at PROSTEP for 15 years, is the deputy head of the business unit PLM, and has been responsible for OpenPDM since 2017. Welcome, Mirko Thijs.
Thank you, Mrs. Bauer. Welcome from my side as well. The entire PDM team would like to welcome you as well. In the next 5 minutes, I would like to show you a little bit what we have been developing over the last 2 years. My colleagues, Mr. Hering and Mr. Falsgraf, have already shown how we integrated that, how we used it in projects. And now we would like to talk about the level below that, the technology. As one of our customers said, it's like a Swiss Army knife. Now, we announced that 2 years ago at last Tech Day. We thought that we wanted to deal with integrate, collaborate in our solutions, and we've seen that. They're actively in use with our customers, and we'd also announced that we will have a new release, OpenPDM 9, of microservice architecture, and also a cloud. And what did we do? What new things were there? Connectivity and new solutions. On the one hand, of course, we have 2 new OpenPDM 8 releases. Last year, OpenPDM 8.6, and this year 8.7. That means the inverted commas old architecture is still in use and supported, but we've made use of the last 2 years to develop the new OpenPDM 9, which had its release last year. In the meantime, we're preparing the release of OpenPDM 9.2, which you will get to see. Connectors. We have a new OpenPDM 8 connector for a customer, PTC Integrity connector. That means these days it's called Windchill RV and S. We're going to rename our connector, of course, as the vendor calls it. We have connectors for 8 and 9, so customers who can use Windchill Integrity can also use with our newest release. We have also provided an OSLC provider. OpenPDM supplies an OSLC provider for all current systems which we already support with our connectors. That means, I believe that we can offer an OSLC interface for any system for our provider. And 2 new LEM connectors. OpenCLM is an issue that has been mentioned several times already. The traceability, particularly in ALM sector. And now we have a JIT and a JIRA connector, which can be used in PDM. The solutions, I've already said that we're constantly thinking about new solutions, specific solutions where we can supply pre-configured processes where we not just offer connectivity but real use cases. On the one hand, we have the entire Think world from PDC. Of course, that's an obvious choice. We provide non-PTC information. I think ThinkWorks as the IoT platform needs data and information from other systems too, obviously. In Dassault system, we have total new Exelite, Exelite 1 part, with which you can find things geometrically. You can do that when the data come from Teamcenter, Windchill, or SAP, and you can work within your suite, and your non-Dassault systems can be directed directly. And last but not least, OSLC linking, and we're quite proud of this. The OSLC provider which we have was bought by NASA directly from the development. The first release is now already productive at NASA. We're quite proud that this concept seems to be working and a reputable customer is using it right away. And I think that we're on the right way, particularly thinking towards OpenCLM, because here we have precisely the connectivity which we look for OpenCLM. In the live session, I would like to introduce our new process engine. I've already said we have broken down the microservices. Here you can see these microservices, one for the process, one for the Suite Experience connector, microservice in the SAP connector. And how, with this process engine, particularly graphical processes can be worked with, we'll have a look at that in real life in the PROSTEP lab so you can see it. Because normally, you're used to OpenPDM working in the background, you don't even realize it's there. And here now I'd like to show you how simple OpenPDM processes can be done. And at the end, what you'll see, of course, we have reworked our process cockpit, graphical interfaces, so that at any time you can see what status your processes are at. And the monitoring has been reworked as well, so that particularly for the administrator, it's very simple to identify errors, remedy them, and continue working. But we'll see that in the PROSTEP lab live in a moment.
Yes, thank you. I'd now like to remind our viewers that we look forward to receiving your questions. You might have questions for our speakers here. Please send them to us. We'll answer them in the Q&A session at the end. You can also ask questions to the speaker speaking now. He will be joining us live following his pre-recorded video, and then we'll hold a Q&A session with him.
So at this point, I'll be switching into English because our next guest is actually at the west coast of the United States. We have a pre-recorded video that he sent in, and it's going to be really, really interesting. Now, who is going to be this guest who's going to get up so early for our session later on? He's a technical fellow at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics, and he's currently assigned to the post as business architect for the engineering and technology organization. He's really experienced. He has more than 30 years of experience talking and working in the field of aircraft conceptual design, as well as the development and implementation of new engineering tools and processes. He's now going to talk about and explain the role of OpenPDM within the PLM landscape, and I'm really happy to give it up now to the video message of Clifton Davies.
Welcome to PROSTEP TechDay 2020. I get the pleasure of presenting for Lockheed Martin Aeronautics. I'm Clifton Davies. I'm a technical fellow for Lockheed Martin Aeronautics and an engineering business architect. And I'm here to give you a brief overview of the project we did with PROSTEP, using PROSTEP skills to integrate 3DX with our downstream business system applications. A very quick introduction to who you're talking to. So Lockheed Martin is the worldwide aerospace and defense contractor that has 4 large divisions: space, missiles and fire control, rotary and mission systems, and where this project was conducted is in the aeronautics sector that does fighters, airlift, advanced development, which is where this project was taking place in terms of creating new integrations for our new programs in aeronautics. To introduce you to the project, our original vision was to use PROSTEP as a partner to integrate our PLM product data down throughout the manufacturing workflow. In spring of 2019, Alamero selected 3DX as our PLM system for our new programs that are coming up. But we had the challenge of doing a very rapid implementation. And we knew as part of that, we needed to also integrate our business systems to be able to quickly build up our digital thread for our programs. And we had to combine this with a modern integration architecture and try to avoid the point-to-point integrations that we've done in past to be able to maximize our efficiency and flexibility. Also in the context of our in-house resources were very limited. They were already overloaded with other IT projects and PLM projects, and our timeframes to be able to meet the demands of our internal customer were very short. We needed an integration partner. We had a new PLM system, and we needed somebody to be able to bring in those connections to what we call the big 3, PLM, ERP, and MES. And based on recommendations, we selected PROSTEP as our partner to be able to accelerate those integrations. Another big change in how we were doing this is that we were going to a service bus or a hub architecture and a microservices approach, which is, as I mentioned before, different than the point-to-point connectors that we had put in place in previous programs and efforts. And we're going to do that for all system integrations, not just for 3DX. The way that the advanced development programs works at Lockheed Martin, we have quite a few different programs that operate on different networks. And so another important aspect of this is it had to be a template for new programs so that we could take what we did with PROSTEP on this one effort and instantiate it in several other places as we migrated more and more programs to 3DX and the new business system model. The initial scope for the interface between PLM and ERP and MES was relatively limited to limit our risk. There's a lot of things you can do to enhance your digital thread with your integrations with your downstream systems. But for this project, to try to get the essentials into place, our interfaces had to deal with getting fundamental part information down to SAP, so the material masters and the MBOM, getting work centers from SAP back up into 3D Experience, where we're doing all of our detailed planning, and then bringing work instructions and links to the graphics down to IBase-T for execution in the MES system. If you look at the diagram on the bottom, you can see the different elements of the high-level architecture. Our integration bus is Red Hat's Fuse, and as opposed to the product that PROSTEP sells as that part of their product portfolio. So that was part of the challenge to PROSTEP, is to not be able to use their own off-the-shelf integration service. We had them use a third-party system to be able to perform the integrations, because that was our corporate standard. So the overall technical approach that PROSTEP came up with to be able to execute this project in a timely manner was to go ahead and leverage their existing capabilities in terms of their connectivity to 3DX and their expertise with that, and leverage their OpenPDM Fuse toolkit to be able to connect to the other parts of our enterprise. So fundamentally, we had 3DX connectivity to 3DX to be able to talk to Fuse. Within Fuse, you had it executing the business logic, the workflows, mapping, queues, and other capabilities, and keeping all of those within the service bus, and exposing the net result as web services to other systems that needed to be extract information. And then the OpenPDM Fuse toolkit was also used to talk to the system-specific scripts, which then talk to SAP and to IBase-T to be able to communicate with them. So the high-level example, this is the 3DX to SAP integration of what the architecture kind of looks like in terms of the actual implementation of getting it to work. And I'll walk through this step by step. So for our particular case, the first thing that happens in getting information transferred from 3DX to SAP is there's an event trigger in 3DX. In the fully automated case where events like this or transfers like this would be triggered by workflows, our manufacturing organization wasn't quite ready for that yet. So we're doing a manual trigger to be able to activate the web services that PROSTEP exposes. The control is then passed to the Fuse server, which has the Lockheed specific business for. And it goes ahead and then triggers the exports using the PROSTEP 3DX connectors to use the various Dassault mechanisms, such as XPDM, their Java interface, to be able to pull, in this particular case, the information out of the manufacturing part of the data model of 3DX, the MID, and et cetera, and pulling that into Fuse to be able to go ahead and perform the operations. PROSTEP then takes the data that's brought into the Fuse and goes ahead and performs their operations and formatting and translations and logic as dictated by the Lockheed Martin specification to be able to transfer that information or translate it into the forms that our version of SAP needs and send it to the correct location. And then once that information is transferred, it's then brought back down and sent through the normal SAP PIPO web services into SAP for consumption. A last step in there that's not documented here is we do send a return code back to 3DX demonstrating and the success and providing an identifier to show that the transaction was successful and where it was recorded. An example, I'll go through 2 examples here in a little bit more detail for the MBOM use case. So we talked about on the previous slide on the MBOM trigger. That starts in 3DX Delmia, so we use 3DX knowledgeware to be able to go ahead and create a button that is able to trigger the web services. So it's able to extract the information from Delmia that is needed for the particular object you're standing on, send that to the web service. OpenPDM then gets that information from 3DX, from the web service, and then connects back into 3DX using the connector, and then uses their knowledge and their capability to be able to get the MBOM, the implement links, follow the scope links, manufacturing responsibility, and effectivity. So for those of you familiar with 3DX and the fact that you're not copying information from engineering to manufacturing, that requires a significant amount of traversal of the 3DX data structure to be able to gather all that information. And PROSTEP did a great job of that with the tools that are available to them. So I've got the information in the service bus. I've performed the operations on it, and then I have to split that into 2 parallel routes. Part of it's got to go to SAP, and part of it has to go to iBaseT, the MES system. So I have 2 parallel routes that are created. The ARP import is handled in Fuse using the PIPO web services, as we talked about before, and you send your material master and MBOM and change master down to SAP. And this is probably no different than almost any enterprise. It's not unique to aerospace. The MES import is then handled also by Fuse, but taking that data, transfer it to a OAGIS format, which is what iBaseT uses as their standard, and using their SyncBOM capability to be able to go ahead and once you drop the data in ActiveMQ, they go ahead and reach that for that information and bring that into iBaseT. For the routings, which is another case, we're not just sending parts now, we're actually sending manufacturing planning detailed information from 3DX Delmia down to iBaseT. We have a similar mechanism in terms of we're doing a manual interface. We have a trigger within 3DX, within Delmia, to stand on a routing and send it to iBaseT. OpenPDM again goes through the interfaces through XPDM but pulls different sets of information and traverses different parts of the product structure to be able to get the information into the service bus. So they extract the MBOM, implements links, scope links, and et cetera, that are all part of the detailed planning that's done within 3DX. I guess that is one thing I should mention, is that we are doing all of our detailed planning in 3DX in the PLM system as opposed to down in the MES system. So that's why all of this information has to be pulled from 3DX Delmia. So once the information's there and any transformations in business logic take place, the data is then sent to SAP using the same PIPO mechanism. But then it's a group idea sent back from SAP that 3DX doesn't know about that's required for the iBaseT import. The ERP import is handled, and that translates your work centers, your routings, and your plant allocation all down to SAP automatically. And then the MES import is handled also, be able to, again, mapping to the OAGIS format, using the sync routing BIS service from iBaseT, and then pushed into ActiveMQ for it to be able to go ahead and ingest that information. So what we're having is that the detailed planning information that was originally developed in the PLM system to be able to give you that full digital thread continuity between engineering and manufacturing is now communicated down to iBaseT for execution. So at a high level, the results of what we've gotten so far in terms of this project, and again, as I mentioned, we're at a limited scope. There's a lot more that we need to do, but this is as far as we've gotten with PROSTEP so far, and it's been successful. But some interesting results that we've had. We started out in 3DX 2019X, and per our schedule for our 3DX upgrades, we switched to 2020X, or upgraded during the middle of this project. And one of the really nice things that happened based on the capability of the PROSTEP COTS tools in terms of their integration and connectors, but also the capability of their team and the code that they deliver to us, is that it was an almost immediate update from them. I think it took less than 24 hours for the PROSTEP team to be able to go ahead and take their setup, be able to upgrade their connectors to the 2020X version, make any tweaks needed to their integration code, and have us up and running again in a very, very short period of time. So that was much faster than we ever could have done ourselves, and it was a really nice surprise. We do have the material master and MBOM information successfully being pulled from 3DX Delmia and sent down to SAP. Right now, as I mentioned, we're currently using XPDM, which has its own challenges, and so we're anticipating an upgrade to the Dassault RESTful APIs in 2021 when they're made available to us, to be able to go to a full microservices architecture that we really want to do with our business system applications. But that said, the PROSTEP XPDM adapter met all of our requirements and was later supplemented by some Java APIs when there were some limitations of XPDM discovered for what we were trying to do. Lockheed Martin is using a rather new business model following the Dassault recommendation on how to use the manufacturing data structures within 3DX. And so there were some things that, while they were implemented correctly in their product, hadn't quite necessarily rippled down through to their interfaces yet. So PROSTEP did a great job of being able to supplement the Dassault out-of-the-box capability in XPDM. Another thing that was essential in this is PROSTEP demonstrated excellent teaming and flexibility, not only with Lockheed Martin and our folks, but working with Dassault, with the FUSE, or the Service Bus Integration team, the MES team, and the SAP team. In a very short period of time, they were welcomed on board as an essential, integral part of the team, and the barriers kind of dropped very quickly between who was internal and who was external. It was just a team trying to get something done. Their delivery of their code was seamlessly translation to the LM team for long-term maintenance. That was part of the concept of our contract. Was PROSTEP offers several different ways, as any service person does, to be able to go ahead and implement a project. If you want to own it yourself, or you need somebody to maintain it long-term, and they transitioned it to us and for long-term maintenance, so that we can be self-sufficient with this integration in the future. And that said, we in the recent past, again, increased the scope of this project from just SAP to supporting IBASE-T, and they were able to very quickly absorb those additional requirements and shift gears from supporting just the ERP system and start supporting the MES system. So, we've completed the SAP work. We're in process with the IBASE-T work in terms of MES. We do have the work instructions routing transfer for IBASE-T working successfully. And we're looking forward to, in the future, we're waiting for an update from Dassault to be able to go ahead and complete bringing work center data from SAP back up into 3DX. So very quickly, some lessons learned. As project lead to this, I am not an IT expert, but these are lessons learned that happen sometimes in almost any project. And in our case, multiple firsts can add significant risks. We had a new PLM system, a new PLM planning process, a new way of using a service bus for integrations, and we had some scheduled dependencies between those that weren't obvious during the initial planning. So as in any project, when you're trying to do several things for the very first time, you can wind up paying the price for that. Vendor selection is really crucial for these kind of projects. When you have somebody to bring in expertise and you have a somewhat chaotic situation where you're doing something new internally with new teams, it's very important to bring in a good vendor that can really adapt to your team and your experience and be flexible. So PROSTEP brought in 3DX integration experience and FUSE experience that was critical to making the project succeed. We focused on our open enterprise and our service bus, and that really worked very well with PROSTEP in terms of their ability to step up and work with a third-party bus. And their agility was essential to this, because in many cases they were waiting on Lockheed Martin as our understanding of 3DX and the new manufacturing processes was maturing on a daily and weekly basis, and we had to adapt. And we changed the requirements underneath them on the fly, and they did really well at making the project successful. So again, we've had some aggressive timelines that we were able to succeed, but a lot of those were happening because we were debating tactical solutions for strategic solutions, and that's something we all face, which is, what do you need to do to get it done quickly and get something working versus working it right, so that in the long term it's a successful IT integration architecture. And perfect can be the enemy of good enough, and our example of using a knowledgeware trigger inside Delmia to trigger the interface versus waiting for the perfect answer of workflow triggers and making it work seamlessly allows us to go ahead and go forward and get the programs working without having to wait for the perfect answer. So again, thank you again to the PROSTEP team for all that they did for us. They did a great job, and they're still working, and things are succeeding still. So that's the short version of the integration that Lockheed Martin has been done using 3DX and PROSTEP, talking to our business systems. Feel free to join us for the Q&A session after this to be able to go ahead and answer any questions that you have regarding our integration project with PROSTEP. Thank you.
That was Clifton Davies via video message, but now he's with us live. A very wonderful good morning, Mr. Davies.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. This has been a great presentation. I especially love the touch with the American flag in the background. It's been quite some interesting times over there, so thank you so much for getting up early and taking time for us. And obviously, it's been quite inspirational, so we've received quite some questions for you, and I'll just go down one by one if that's okay with you. The first one is, what efforts does it roughly take to adapt existing processes?
The process adaptation mostly took place in the new PLM we are adapting to. That was actually more difficult in adapting our manufacturing processes than it was to adapt our integration processes to PROSTEP's connectors and using an open source service bus as the method to communicate between business systems.
Thank you so much for that. Second question that came in, do you run OpenPDM 8 or OpenPDM 9 in your solution?
We are currently using OpenPDM 8. We had looked to transition to OpenPDM 9, but that did not fit in with our schedule with all of the other upgrades happening on this complex project. So the OpenPDM 9 upgrade is being deferred to 2021 to align with us also adapting to the new microservices APIs in the PLM system. So we will use the new technology in OpenPDM 9 at the same time we use the RESTful APIs and other new APIs exposed by Dassault and iBaseT.
So more interesting steps coming up. A third question that we've received is, do you plan to integrate other PLM systems or other subsidiary of Lockheed in the integration platform?
Yes. We in Lockheed Martin Aeronautics have two main PLM systems that we use, Siemens Teamcenter and Dassault 3DX. Right now, 3DX is the only one integrated using PROSTEP technology and the Fuse service bus, but we plan an integration with Teamcenter in the near future.
Sounds interesting, thank you. And how many users are actually working with the integrated solutions, and what is planned for the future?
We have not deployed it to the customer yet. It's currently in final testing and planned to be deployed hopefully before the end of the year. And as I mentioned, our Our future plans have to do with accommodating the technology upgrades in 3DX version 2021X in terms of the APIs, and expanding the interface between the PLM system, the ERP, and the MES to, instead of having kind of a one-way transaction, to having the full bidirectional information so that your design and manufacturing community in the PLM system has much better awareness of what's happening in the other business systems so that they can make better decisions.
Thank you. Another question just came in before I was about to put the iPad aside. So it says, you mentioned limitations in XPDM, which you addressed with Java API or REST services. What are the main XPDM limitations that you've encountered?
I'm probably not the right expert to speak to that because that was something PROSTEP handled, but there are challenges in the use of XPDM to traverse some of the more recent product structure changes in the PLM system in 3DX. And so sometimes we had to adapt to the difference in readiness level between XPDM and the manufacturing data model techniques in use in the Delmia product in 3DX.
Perfect. Mr. Davies, thank you very, very much for being with us here. I wish you a great remaining day. Stay healthy, and maybe we'll see you some other time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will now continue with something that's very interesting. We'll be talking about integration processes and how they can be graphically modulated. That is one highlight from the PROSTEP lab. Mirko Thijs, over to you.
Welcome back. Also from my side, as already announced by Mrs. Bauer, I am planning to present our new process engine live. Before we get started with these processes, though, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the technical background, what OpenPDM 9 actually means and which technologies are used therein. 2 years ago, we had announced already that with OpenPDM 9, we were going to switch entirely to Java 11, the long-supported release of Java. Also, OpenJD is going to be supported. We're going to use adopt JDK, but if you use a different JDK, then we don't see any problems that you could use this as well. But officially, we support adopt JDK. Now, I announced that before already. OpenPDM, we've broken it down into microservices. So what you already know and can do with OpenPDM 8 is now taken care of by many different services, which are broken down functionally and can also operate independently. Why did we do that? Udo Hering had already introduced that before already. We're going to the cloud. You're going to join us going to the cloud, and Corona is actually accelerating that tremendously. We can tell, and we can see that later on in the roadmap, and it's only by breaking it down in this way into a monolithic architecture in such microservices can we merge to the cloud. And I think at this point we have taken exactly the right architectural decision looking at today's requirements. And of course, we're going to support all communication based on the REST protocols as cloud architectures simply require today. So what does that mean for our connectors? We also have import and export logic. So workers who can autonomously import and export data from the VM systems to the connectors. Before they used to be part of the base, now they are part of the connectors. And such architectures as just presented by Clifton, are possible. We establish connectivity to other service buses, and that means you have uniform options to get to your PLM systems. And of course, we've done something to our process engine. We've announced that already too, that we're going to move away from our Java-based engine we developed ourselves and use a much used tool. We use OpenTools here, and after many tests, we decided to use Amonda, a BPM-based process engine, and I would like to present that in the next few minutes. So what did I have in mind? If you've been listening to Timur Trautmann this morning already, these days no product can be made without using Excel, and accordingly I thought we'll just do an import-export process based on Excel. That means we're going to have an Excel spreadsheet with a few tasks, so each line in this Excel sheet is a task. We'll read that, we'll map it, and import it to 3DX. Just a moment, where's my mouse? Here's my mouse. 3D Experience. We're going to edit this process so that you can see how simply this process can be edited, and then we're going to import the same Excel sheet to Windchill. What does the architecture look like? So do you have an idea of the technology which you're going to see? Most applications run on my laptop here. That means we're going to start in the process modular, look at the process is then deployed on the OpenPDM microservices and carried out there as well, and during execution we can access many other OpenPDM microservices, for instance the mapping service, which is also on my laptop, and 3D Experience connector, and the second step, the Windchill connector, which run in our test center and the PDM systems. Now that's enough background and enough of PowerPoint. I think that we should just look at the whole thing in real life, and let's get started with the process modeler. I had already said our processes in future are going to be based on BPM standard. They're going to be graphically modeled. That means we have a modeler with which you can simply drag tasks from the interface, edit them accordingly, together with our OpenPDM predefined templates. They can be connected. You can, of course, also build your own templates so that these specific processes can be implemented, and that way this process is orchestrated. To put it in simple words, just to drag the arrows between the different tasks. Now for 15 minutes, of course, it's quite a lot to flick a process like this together, so of course I prepared this beforehand. What you can see in the top line is our OpenPDM IFOL process. This process is always there, and we will always supply that. What does this IFOL process do? It prepares the entire OpenPDM integration. That means the process is set up, logging is prepared, so that you have all the data which you need for system integration, and which you will find in the reports later on. Of course, the process is ended in a controlled manner as well. We generate a report. Every process instance has a report, and we'll look at that in live as well to see what it looks like. And last but not least, a very important function actually, errors occur again and again. You do need error handling, and error handling has to be carried out in a controlled manner as well, and we prepared that as well already. And if you start with this preparation, then you can see 3 lines here. The top line deals with reading the Excel file to begin with, and mapping of the data to 3D Experience. Then I would like to show you, when I have imported the data, then we update them as well, so that you can see right away that the update will also work, but we'll do that in one process because we don't have much time. It will import, update the data right away to gain a bit of time, and once we've carried out this process, I'm going to restructure it so that down at the bottom this line we've already prepared becomes active, mapping to Windchill, and accordingly the import to Windchill will be carried out. When you click on these things, then you can see exactly the different fields that you can click on these tasks depending on which template you select. And with OpenPDM, we've got quite a lot of templates already prepared, which are basically the standard use cases you would always need for standard integration. And of course, we're going to put them in the next releases. More and more of our new products are switching to OpenPDM or are starting with OpenPDM 9.0, and that's how we're going to proceed. Now we're going to have a look at the whole thing. I'm going to switch to the process service. I'm going to start the new cockpit. You can see the cockpit. You can see at the moment no process is running. We don't have a problem. And there's no process waiting for human interaction. So we've got two process definitions deployed. If I click on this, then down here I can see our default process, which of course is always deployed. And I've got one process deployed, the showcase process. If I click on this, then you can see exactly the same graphical interface in the administration interface. Now let's start the process. I'll just do that manually so that you can see it. So I'm going to do this by hand using the task list. That's possible to test processes, or just as now to carry out a demo. I'm just going to click on Start Process and select the respective template. I'm going to enter a business case so that this process can be found better later on, and I'm going to start the process. If I don't enter that here, then you have a timestamp. Isn't as easy to read as 3D Experience demo, of course. Now I can see the process is running at the moment and is already at updating the structure. And after the update, it will prepare the import. When I click on this, I can see that, of course, see the small blue dot. So that is where the process instance is right now. So we've got graphical feedback as well for my process. Then let's go back. The process should have been completed successfully, and that's how it is. Let's go to 3D Experience and have a look and see what we've imported. These are different tasks, which are then to be carried out. And now I've got to renew the session. So these tasks can be easily started. We've provided a small text file so that it's easier when you're processing this task. Now the session has recovered, the data are loaded, and I can see the tasks down here. They've been imported. That's also precisely what we had in our Excel sheet. And if I look at these tasks in detail, then I can see that each of these tasks also has an attached document which I could work on or download for the demo. And for the Tech Day, colleagues have also left their OpenPDM logo behind. So that was 3D Experience. Let's have a brief look to see how it is when we change the process. And change at this point, I thought I'll just use a different PLM system. That means I'm going to break down the process in such a way that the connection is no longer with the tasks that go to 3D Experience and 3D Experience mapping, but now I'm going to connect the process flow, orchestration of the tasks, after reading the file to mapping to Windchill. And here we have a Windchill connector addressed, or our Windchill connector in our test system, and the map data are then imported. So that means at this point The import worker, already mentioned, is addressed and the data are automatically imported. And before we deploy it, we should also store it and then deploy. That's very simple in my developer environment. The process is now deployed on the process server. I can go back to my cockpit, and if I go to my cockpit, then here at least I can see this is the last version that run. But I can see here we have more versions, a new version 37, and there we can see, this process is now running on Windchill, and the next instance, which is started, is imported to Windchill. So we really have a version control in our process server, and instances that are running are not disturbed by such a deployment. Now we're going to start the process the same way we've just done it. We'll enter Windchill demo, start the process over again, and we'll go back to the processes. You can see that this process is running, and I hope and I think that it will encounter an error right away, and at this point I would like to show you the process monitoring, the new process monitoring, which I'd already announced in the last slide, the last session. Here is the error. Thank goodness we're actually expecting it this time, but the question is, how can I find out what I have to do as an administrator in order to resolve this problem? So I go into process monitoring, and I can see that the process has 6 steps in total. The first 5 have been run successfully. In the 6th one, there is a mistake, an error. I can look at the details, and I hope that it's not too small, but I'll just tell you that a Word file was not found. It wasn't there, and what is not there cannot be uploaded to the server, and accordingly the system reports an error. So why can OpenPDM not find it? I quite deliberately entered a wrong file name for this file. Now I'm going to correct this file name. As an administrator, I've found the mistake. Imagine in real life it would be a network problem that you just fixed and found, and as an administrator, of course, you don't want to call the engineer and say, please restart the process, I've re-established a network connection. No, you want to restart the process immediately to get the data into the system. And I've done that on the administration console right away. That means your colleagues didn't even notice that there was a slight network problem. You were messaged, something has to be corrected, and you were able to trigger the process from the administration console. And as I've now entered the right name, that has happened successfully. And if we look at the whole thing in Windchill, then we can, and update it, then we can see here we have tasks as Windchill notes, and the Word document is also attached to these notes when I open it, when the Word file opens OpenPDM. Now that's an example of how you or how we design the processes together with you and how you can administer them in future. Cliff has already said this, particularly this microservices architecture is highly suitable for these microservice architectures. Now, that was it from the lab. I hope that I was able to present a little bit of OpenPDM, otherwise we keep on running in the background. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Theis. We'll now move on from OpenPDM to OpenCLM. What is that? Well, it's what we announced at the start, the new product that we are presenting to you today. It's all about traceability. It's about tracing complex processes in the future logically. The product manager that will be introducing the new product to you is almost as new as the product itself. He joined the company in March and took on product management. He came from the car manufacturer Schaeffler, and now he's so pleased to be able to introduce his product to you. Welcome, Fabrice Mogo-Nem.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. 3 is a charm, so I'm very happy to be here with you in the third session to present our new solution, OpenCLM. As you will see in a moment, the OpenCLM solution is not only a solution that will help you to better control your complex development processes, we believe it is an essential element for your digitalization strategy. As that will work, you will find after a brief introduction. By introduction, I would like to have a look at the environment that we're working in as a company. As you already know, we're in constant change, and the novelty that we're working with today, but will be confronted with even more in future, is a higher frequency in which changes, novelties happen in our business environment, and also the unpredictability with which these changes happen. An example is the COVID-19 pandemic. That is quite taxing at the moment, and it shows that based on a singular event, all our outlooks and planning can be totally turned upside down. We don't have a crystal ball yet, so we have to make use of other means to be able to prepare better for the future. What is the solution? In future, we see that companies have the necessity to become more flexible. It's also important that potential we have in innovation, in cost reduction, but also risk management. We have to exploit all the potential we can find. There are possibilities to make use of in simple ways. Some of the potential that we have detected, looking at these numbers, these are facts that establish that because of insufficient processes and IC solutions, there is still plenty of dormant potential which is only waiting for it to be lifted. One example, we lose a lot of our capacity, 61%, according to statistics, and a large part of that is due to shadow work. That means work that is done that cannot necessarily be billed to your customers, and 22% of this waste is because of document searching. Now, that's certainly no new phenomenon for you. That's pretty well known in many companies, that document hunters exist in many companies, and we have ways you can try and increase your efficiency. There are further numbers which are meant to make us think. In the United States alone, $25 billion are spent every year on warranty claims. If you were to break this down to the automotive industry, that's 9 billion euros, which are only spent on such claims, and that is a considerable number. And if you look behind these numbers, a lot of money spent on this is because in development, probably as well, in the downstream processes after development, we did not meet certain compliance requirements, or at least not fully. That also is due to lack of transparency in processes and IT landscapes and the databases which are often used to support decisions. It's this lack of transparency which leads to such lack of respect for compliance rules. We at PROSTEP see plenty of potential here, and after optimization of manufacturing with Industry 4.0, we have proven for years now already that we can do this. There are similar topics like, for instance, work management, 4.0, or compliance and traceability. These are cornerstones, we believe, for your digitalization strategy in future. So what does that look like? You can see an example of a potential solution. That, of course, is going to be our solution with OpenCLM in future. How many meetings could you say if you had all the information about your development project and development maturity at your fingertips? Certainly lots of calls could be saved that way, or your developers. Currently, they're spending a lot of time to integrate data with each other beyond barriers and establishing traces between data in order to meet the compliance requirements, creating transparency requirements you need for such complex development projects, addressing Excel solutions because they have no other choice, or for you as decision makers who are responsible for complex releases. How secure would you feel if you had the possibility to get all the information you need for a decision instantly? For a traceability report, for instance, that would give you a lot of certainty, a lot of security in your decisions. These are examples that are imaginable, but there are other application scenarios which would become possible with such a solution, and you have to be brave enough to continue working on this so that it becomes reality. And we have confronted this challenge at PROSTEP, and with this new solution, OpenCLM, we can provide precisely such a platform which is based on our proven capabilities. We have 25 years of PLM expertise, and we're continuing to build on that. Our colleague, Mr. Theis, has presented before what the integration of the IT processes can look like. It's certainly not possible to imagine it could be any simpler. I'm sure he has other ideas how it could be even more optimized, but integration has never been so simple, and that's what we're based on. We have the possibility to enter your system worlds, your process worlds, and from there, take all the necessary information, process data, project data, product data. We can extract all that information, process it, and illustrate it in a suitable way so that further process steps and activities can be triggered that way. Our consulting team will support you in that, in preparing such an approach through strategic consulting, of course taking into account your own experts. These are capabilities we have established over the years, and that is what we are based on in OpenCLM. You will certainly want to know, is OpenCLM a new PDM product or a PDM system? Of course not. There are plenty of PDM systems on the market, and we see increasingly that companies are moving away from a one-vendor strategy to best-of-breed strategies, because they can see that by increased product complexity and also the need to remain innovative, they have different use cases for their products, for their services, and for that often you need different tools. And we feel more at home in such heterogeneous landscapes because we have proven that we have the ability to integrate these worlds, and OpenCLM is precisely this layer which offers these additional add-ons. And you have the possibility, we've seen in the Lockheed Martin presentation before, an ESB knot, and in such landscapes of our OpenCLM solution, which you could also see as a small version, which enables you to look into the system to get stability information, explicit or implicit links to semantic searches, intelligent networks. In future, all of that could be offered, but these traces and the data that belong to it, and we illustrate that so that further processes can be supported, like for instance baselining. And with such baselines, we heard about this, Global X. Such configuration can be exchanged with partners and also customers. And with PDF Generator 3D, we have the possibility to pack them based on standards, for instance with the GDP container. That is a project which I was one of the initiators of in VDA and the PROSTEP IVIP Association, so that we can work on such standards for exchanging network data so that our MBSA operations can be supported at this point. When can you buy OpenCLM? We're going to proceed in several steps in development. In January 21, we're going to have the first demo version we can offer, and based on this demo, the whole thing will be available for you to experience. You can interact with it. What we can certainly offer already, because we're involved in several projects, and we work on POC, NASA for instance, we have modules at NASA in use, system world, panels, doors, magic drawers and windshield integration, and we have traces beyond system boundaries there. With OpenCLM as viewer, of course, such traces can be visualized. It will only be available in July 21, but beforehand, of course, you're welcome to get in touch with us so that we can, together with our team of consultants, work on use cases which are most important to you. And, of course, we also want to make you ready for the use of OpenCLM. Now, back to you, Mrs. Bauer, and I'm very happy that we'll be working together in future with OpenCLM. Thank you.
Fabrice Mogo-Nem. We're also looking forward to the Q&A session that will take place at the end. You will then be able to ask Fabrice Mogo-Nem a few questions. The future is in the cloud, particularly regarding OpenPDM. This is what we've heard about trends and highlights. We'll now look at the roadmap, if it's correct, and Mirko Thijs will tell us.
Thank you very much. I think the roadmap is correct. Yes. As every year, the outlook towards the future, what have we planned in future? We started with what have we done over the last 2 years? What did our roadmap look like then, and where are we now? Now we're heading towards the future. And perhaps an important piece of information, what does our release model look like in future? OpenPDM 8, now at the beginning, OpenPDM 9, we're used to have one release per year, in between of course patches and system extensions, but we only have one big release in April really. But this year with OpenPDM 8.7, the last time a large OpenPDM 8 release, now we're going to switch to a biannually, twice annually release rhythm in February and August, in between feature packs and bug fixes. That's important, of course. And as Fabrice has just indicated, you're used to us talking about things long before we release them. And that means these are points at which we officially say, now we're going to announce it, now we're going to advertise it, but of course, in between there are always feature packs that we can supply to you at that time already. What I've listed here, for the large 4 PLM systems on the market, they've been listed specifically. Of course, there are releases for all the other connectors out there, but that would be too much to fit on this slide. For Windchill 3D Experience Center, Team Center and SAP, right, and if you look at this slide, you will see I've also indicated when the vendors release their systems, and you can see we're always 2 months, 3 months after the official PLM vendors release. That's when the respective connectors will be ready. That's something that we've been doing for years, and we seem to be getting on fine with you that way. And we're going to do that every 6 months with OpenPDM 9 now. OpenPDM 8, if it's technically possible, then these releases, at least the main releases, will of course be provided for OpenPDM 8 as well. We'll just have to communicate with each other to see whether that's technically possible, or for instance the Java version might have changed so much that we might have to switch from OpenPDM 8 to something modern like OpenPDM 9. Now the individual features for OpenPDM 9, as Cliff already mentioned, the 3D Experience West interface will be used. In the second interface, AOMC provider, which is in use at NASA, will obtain a new release, and Gib connector, specifically for this few new smaller connectors. From January, OpenPDM Migrate will switch to 9 entirely. That means migration projects, which we had at the beginning from KUKA and Continental, will be able to run entirely on OpenPDM 9, so that here again with the new technology and support new technologies. For the summer, we have planned to do what's already been said all along, cloud. Together with our microservice architecture, we're cloud ready. All the tests and all the requirements which we have received from you so far, with which we want to, or had to migrate into cloud with you, or wanted to, we fared very well, there were no problems at all. But we also see that 3D Experience, particularly last week, released a new cloud interface, so here we can go a step further even. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, what about integration services of PROSTEP and so on, at the time I couldn't really imagine that. COVID-19 is revitalizing all these conversations that we have in pre-sales with you though, so that means I do believe that at the moment we're heading precisely in that direction and we're putting all our efforts into this so that we have an OpenPDM cloud version. But something like what we're hearing presented, Docker container and all that, that can be done already today. We're cloud ready in that respect. There will be new project solutions with planning Windchill 3D Experience Delmia. So if you have Windchill as a PDM system, you're planning production planning with Delmia, then there will be a Connect solution from PROSTEP. We're just thinking whether we should do the same thing with Teamcenter manufacturing, so I put a question mark there because that's not official yet. But support of production planning processes, that's where we see the future for OpenPDM as well, besides the cloud. And then, of course, I put it right at the back here, but that does not mean that that will only be in the year 2022. My colleague, Nem, has already was looking quite sad because it's in the corner here, but you can see it's slanted at an angle. So all the ALM connectors, CodeBeam, Laria, and so on, these connectors will be released in parallel with this plan, and that will be based on needs in projects. And of course also for OpenCLM. Now I'm very happy that you'll join us in the chat in a moment. Thank you very much and goodbye.
You're not excused quite yet. We are now going to start our Q&A session, and I'm sure there'll be questions for you. But you'll have a bit of a break first, because I'll start with Mr. Mogo Nem. We've received the question, what is meant exactly by indirect areas?
Indirect areas are basically engineering, anything that isn't manufacturing.
Short and sweet, very clear. Mr. Theis, over to you. The question for you is, some customers are using OpenPDM 8. How do you recommend them moving on to version 9? Upgrade or completely new? What about the current licenses? Are they valid? And is the maintenance contract valid?
That was more than one question. Let me start from the back. The licenses, of course, remain. We didn't have new licenses when we switched from 7 to 8 or anything like that. Maintenance contract, etc. That's precisely why we have maintenance contracts. You get the newest release. Upgrade recommendation, just as it's been so far, we always recommend an OpenPDM upgrade when you update your PLM systems. We see that integration to be a unit between different systems. That means if your 3D Experience, Teamcenter, Windchill, Aris, or whatever kind of PLM system is updated to the next release, then you have the test phase anyway, so that would be a good opportunity to switch to new OpenPDM, and then also switch to the new processes as illustrated. But that needs a bit of work, of course, I'll tell you that right in advance, but it's not a totally new development.
We'll continue with you. You seem to be on a roll. Are there customers that use OSLC-based solutions?
Few, but yes. It's been mentioned several times already today. In our case, it's mainly NASA using the OSLC provider of ours. We're talking to lots of customers about OSLC. At the moment, that's a similar trend to cloud. Link, don't copy. data. And I think that in future that will be more and more up and coming. That's why with the OSLC provider we offer a solution to offer PDM. And with OpenPDM you can do both, copy and link.
You can also do both listen and ask questions. I'm continuing to read the questions out live. We still have a few to cover. Mr. Theis, what do you understand by cloud support in OpenPDM?
I've already said cloud. I think if you were to ask 5 people, you'd get 7 different answers what they understand cloud to mean. At the moment, cloud is more like renting a virtual machine with the known cloud providers like Amazon and Azure, and deploy my application there. That's what we see. PLM systems are taken from people's cellars to the cloud, but on a dedicated machine. That, for OpenPDM, that means no big changes really in comparison with what it was like before, because we can install PDM on your server or on a cloud server. That's exactly the same thing, really. But, and I've already announced this, in the cloud we want to go a step further. All the cloud services are to be used. Load balancing, the database in the cloud should be made available. And we are also considering going a step further and offering this integration service, but that's really looking far ahead. I can't give you any guarantees for that, but we're looking at the future.
That's the right thing to do. I would also like you to help me with the definition, Mr. Theis. Can you explain what integration as a service is?
As if I'd known it was coming, integration as a service. At the moment, we develop integration for you in most cases, but you then operate this integration yourselves. That means you've got administrators, partly these are engineers as well, who know a lot about OpenPDM. We have a lot of requests from customers who don't want to do that in future at all anymore. They say, we're going to go to Dassault or Teamcenter in future and have our PLM systems in the cloud, so we don't want to have OpenPDM ourselves either. Can't PROSTEP operate that for us and do this connectivity in the cloud? And I think that that will be one of our jobs in future to do that. As already said, that's a long shot, that's the future. We're still thinking about how that might work, but, well, you just have to look at these things.
Exactly. And it will work. Thank you. There are no further questions. So thank you to all our listeners, our viewers, who asked so many questions, but also thank you to our speakers who informed you so well today. I have 2 things to remind you of at this point in time. There'll now be another session for you. You can continue to exchange ideas with Mr. Theis. Just look on your screen, there's a link to another team session. Click on this and you'll be transferred to that meeting. You might obviously want to share these sessions with colleagues that couldn't take part today. Over the next few days, these sessions will be online. We recorded them. We translated them into English, so there should be no problems for anyone. Thank you once again for joining us. It was our first digital event and I think it was a great success. I hope we can do the same in the future. Thank you. Stay healthy. Goodbye.